He was worthy, and he accomplished so much. But then, you came along. You who were stronger. You who were faster. You I like better.
Spoilers for the 2018 game Dusk. Go play it and come back. It's cheap. It's great. Dusk is awesome, and I want to use that as an excuse to talk about some other stuff. Because what can I say about Dusk that hasn't been said more eloquently already? It has always annoyed the shit out of me that people are absolutely trash at categorizing games, and categorization in general, really. Case in point, we use action as a catch-all genre for games that don't fit into the others. But any categorization system that leaves the majority of its items in other is broken. So the point I'm coming to, Dusk is a first-person shooter. That description sucks. If you were suddenly in third person, would the game be so fundamentally different that it's an entirely different genre? That's absurd. If you had a button to switch perspective, is that a button that switches the game's genre at runtime? Madness. Meanwhile, let's look at some other games called first-person shooters. Is Dusk anything like Doom? Short answer, yes, but put a pin in that for a second. How about Blood or Quake? Absolutely. If it wasn't excellent, I'd deride it by saying it's merely what you make when you want to make Blood, but on the Quake engine. Doesn't Max Payne, a third-person shooter, provide the same game feel as Fear, a first-person shooter? I think so. They both give the feeling of gunplay in a John Woo movie, with the environment going nuts and bullet time so you can soak it all in. Halo and Doom are both first-person shooters. Do they feel like very similar games? Absolutely not. While it's true that there's shooting and a first-person perspective, that's about all they have in common. Halo is the floatiest game in the world. Doom is fast and tight. Halo popularized the console gun loadout solution. One button to switch, hold the button to pick up a weapon on the ground. Doom doesn't ask you to think about where in space you're putting the armory you're carrying around. More than that, in Doom, weapons are situational, a tool for a job. In Halo, it's mostly a matter of preference. In Doom, you're in a level and you're killing your way through it. In Halo, you're very much a soldier. Higher command issues you orders through Cortana. Master Chief's job generally is to be given a waypoint, go there, maybe hit a button, and wait for the next one. Also, shoot any enemies meanwhile. The Doomslayer's motivations are complicated. But TLDR, kill demons. Going from point A to point B, and maybe pressing buttons is merely incidental. He's there for the fight itself. Meanwhile, let's look at Gears of War. Just like in Halo, you're a soldier. Your job, generally, is to get from point A to point B, maybe press a button, wait for orders for the next destination, and shoot any enemies trying to stop the above. I propose that a better classification of games would put Halo and Gears of War in the same genre, and Max Payne and Fear in a second. If Gears was first person, we would already agree that it and Halo are in the same group. I propose better genre names. That group that we would put Halo and Gears into, how about something like War Shooter? Then, much like the Metroidvania genre is named for its most famous defining games, we can use the name Wolfendoom for Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. It's a little better than the name Boomer Shooter. Boomers were trying to make it illegal for Gen Xers and Millennials to play these games.
Even if all of these concerns with a rating system are addressed, the video game industry, in my opinion, will not have done as much as it should do to avoid creating more violence in our already too violent society. The rating system must not be a fig leaf for the industry to hide behind. They must also accept their responsibility to control themselves and simply stop producing the worst of this junk.
90s shooters implies no more can be made. Classic shooter implies there aren't bad ones, and that's pure hubris. You ever hear a pretentious argument that games are art? More than that, a unique form of art because their interactive nature lets them communicate with the player more than other media? Playing Dusk, you feel the way the designer speaks to you. AAA games do not have this artistry. Mortal Kombat 1, is the worst offender of this that I've ever seen. Mortal Kombat hates its past. Mortal Kombat 12 shows us that Liu Kang became Keeper of Time and reset the universe. In previous canon, there was a Mortal Kombat tournament that the Elder Gods used to mediate conflict between realms.
What's a realm?
A realm is like a world, but not necessarily a planet. Pretty much an alternate universe. So anyway, Liu Kang reset time, and rather than a dire situation where Shao Kahn will be allowed to invade Earthrealm if he wins this Mortal Kombat tournament,
we gather once again to honor my late husband's legacy, to continue the tournament that he founded with Lord Liu Kang, in hopes that it would foster peace among realms. May Jared's soul watch over us with pride from its resting place in the living forest.
The tournament is just a fun event, like the Olympics. Jared and Liu Kang set it up. You know, Jared. In the old canon, he was king of the realm of Edenia, but Shao Kahn invaded Edenia, killed Jared to take his throne. And also keeps Sindel as his wife, giving us gaming's best power couple.
Wife, I have missed you.
In the new canon, Edenia isn't mentioned. Apparently Liu Kang retconned the entire realm out of existence, but couldn't keep Jared alive, and didn't feel the need to give Shao, now merely General Shao, a stray lightning bolt. And speaking of characters suffering the inexplicable choices of Liu Kang, Baraka. In the first canon, Tarkatans were an interspecies breed of some demonic race from the Netherrealm and some humanoid realm. In the second canon, they were a regular race from a realm that Shao Kahn had conquered. In the third canon, Liu Kang apparently retconned their realm out of existence too. Mortal Kombat 1 is not a game with artistry, but Baraka is a fan favorite, read profitable, so we need Tarkatans to exist. So now, Tarkat is a disease. It's kind of treated like leprosy, with sufferers confined to a leper colony, partly so the disease doesn't spread, but mostly because of the social stigma. Only instead of the body falling apart before you die an agonizing death alone in the gutter, Tarkatans eventually just go feral. All of that is the game telling you Liu Kang took the title and powers of Keeper of Time from the former eldest of the gods, reversed time all the way back to the Big Bang to remake the universe in his image, and it's mostly the same. Nothing new has been brought in, but all the old canon has been erased. Then we get the new plot direction. Remember I said Liu Kang took the title? He had to fight Shang Tsung first, and that split the timeline.
It turns out our battle released mammoth energies which ripped apart time's fabric.
That implies that we went from 1 to 2, but then a third Keeper of Time arrives, Kitana.
Easy, Kitana. You are among friends.
What's happened? Where am I?
A long way from home. In a different timeline, to be precise.
What? Are you also
A keeper of time? Yes.
both of us? How is that possible?
The battle for Chronica's Hourglass ripped apart time's fabric. Where there once was one timeline, there are now many. Each new timeline represents a different possible outcome of that battle. In mine, I became Time's Keeper. In yours, it was you.
Who was nowhere near that fight. So I guess we didn't bisect the timeline, there's always been infinitely many. That's how the game comes around to its real point. There's invasions where another timeline tries to invade. That lets you unlock cosmetics that are summed up as, what if character X borrowed some aesthetic elements from character Y? Not enough that it looks like a uniform, of course. That would imply varying levels of army organization. No one wants to flesh all that out. Mortal Kombat 1 wants you to play it toward the ultimate final goal of unlocking limited time cosmetics. Obviously, I have to at least mention the $12 fatality. They've been trying to sell easy fatalities as a consumable, so you don't have to do the button input for a while. When Mortal Kombat was a cultural phenomenon, a fatality was something you did to flex your knowledge of the game.
Fatality. Noob Saibot win.
Now it's more grist for microtransactions.
Quan Chi wins.
Essentially, every fighting game has some concept of building meter to be used in a super move, which is usually a long cinematic combo. Mortal Kombat added X-rays, but they're afraid to make it too hard for novice players, so you just press 2 buttons. Then, to counteract new players feeling like once they start losing it's over, Mortal Kombat diverged from other fighting games by forcing supers to be a rubber band mechanic. Their super moves are now called Fatal Blows, and you can only fatally blow your opponent when your health is low. It's a clear move to lower the skill floor to bring in new players at the cost of lowering the skill ceiling, because who cares about maintaining old players? All of that is how Mortal Kombat 1 is incessantly communicating to you its one and only message: spend more money. Buy cosmetics, buy this fatality. We split some characters off into DLC you'll need to buy. Don't feel the need to buy yet another palette swap ninja? Okay, buy this guest character you might have an action figure of. It doesn't matter. Most games have the same singular, unrelenting message.
That's the GameStop pre-order safe.
No, I don't believe you.
Yep.
Which is why I've largely not cared about video games for years. Okay, Dusk itself. Dusk is a Wolfendoom, and let me tell you the artistic experience it conveys. At least to me. A simple thesis.
Go on, take it. Taste the power.
Unbelievably refreshing to hear a message other than spend more money. But also, this is what I want to say about Dusk that isn't mostly talking about the 90s. You take the syringe of blistering heat. One might even say it's super hot. It's a combat power-up. This clip demonstrates the rest of that message. No fear, come play. The game doesn't progress until you take that syringe. There's no narrative about rejecting violence or your destiny. And by the time you played to here, you know exactly what the setup is. Big open room, bait in the middle, ominous voice tempting you with ill-defined notions of power. In any other game, I'd call it a trap. You'd edge up to it carefully, just enough to spring the trap, so you can get a head start on retreating. In Dusk, you see the bait, you go, hey, thanks man, alright, let's get the party started. It really clicked for me when the cart dog is introduced. You're walking down long corridors and then big open room, obvious trap. Walk in just far enough and bull-style enemy, meaning if you retreat back into the corridors, cart dog will murder you. If you move forward, pushing into the room with the new and unknown threat, the fight is much easier. It would have been more iconic if it clicked for me with the Wendigo. I was legitimately afraid of the Wendigo for a bit. They're so fast. They start off invisible. The orchestral sting is terrifying. They sponge up a lot of damage. But I fought them enough and the fear wears off. Just backpedal. Line up 3 shots from the hunting rifle. They only have 1 melee attack, so you can trigger it to buy yourself a bit more time and distance. The fact that they'll definitely be closest to you makes them ideal to shield you from enemy projectiles, so they often run off for some infighting. It's not so bad. I fell off the map in the fight against Mama somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 billion times. Plus the level communicates to you, you have time to set up. Place all these explosive barrels right in front of her door, trigger the fight, detonate them, and she apparently loses health constantly. Great, she has a death clock running. All you have to do is outlast her. When I fall off the level for the millionth time, all I can think of is how much time it's going to take. So forget it, just fight her. She can't jump, so you're guaranteed plenty of distance to dodge her rivets and send back your own. She can't get away from the wall right next to her, so go ahead and use your own explosives. Again, Dusk tells me, stop running, come outside and start fighting. Erebus reactor is why I phrase that with the word outside. Walk up and out into a giant arena, make yourself at home on the top walkways, and have a super fun arena segment. Afterward, you walk outside and it turns out the building's roof opens up. This is your victory lap. The reactor chamber is stuffed with gore and spent shell casings. Leave that behind. You're headed onwards and upwards. There's a later section, you're mocked for being so small, so powerless. But no biggie. Just walk out of your mouse hole and annihilate another room full of monsters. And of course, the final boss is only made vulnerable by exposing it to cursed light. I watched Civ 11, and Dusk was one of 3 games he called Defenders of the Faith. Dusk, Medieval, and Ion Fury. Civvy says Serious Sam and Painkiller were unsuccessful attempts to bring back what was lost, and even the way he talks about Doom 2016 sounds a bit negative.
Even Doom 2016 took a path closer to this with its combat, locking you in arenas with waves of monsters.
Civvy, the premier shooter fan boomer, saying Doom is mid compared to Dusk? Better add that to the wish list right off. Oh, native Linux support? Might as well buy it. I watch Errant Signal, and Campster did a video on Dusk. He talks a lot about how a game makes a person feel and what it has to say, taking into account the fact that a game is a series of choices made by developers. He also focused the video on how Dusk resurrects a lot of lost good ideas.
But just because something is no longer trendy, hip, or manufactured at mass scale doesn't mean it no longer has value. There's a difference between moving on from the past and utterly discarding it, and Dusk makes a strong case that the old ways, when approached with care, can still bear fruit.
Both of those guys talk about the context of video games in the 90s. In those days, I was a child, even worse at video games than I am now. I've had this in my Steam library for a long time. I only just recently got around to it. Part of the reason Dusk languished in my backlog for so long is that my experience of every level of Duke Nukem 3D starts with the cheat code for God mode. So I never really experienced that game, in spite of being a huge fan at the time. One might say I cheated not only the game, but myself. So I was afraid I wouldn't be capable of beating Dusk. I did hit a wall with the Guardian. Don't be fooled by the fact that I have the achievement for telefragging him. That was a happy accident. But whatever, I got into 800 out of 17,000, we'll take it and go forward. The rest of the game was mostly easy enough. Although I was on I can take it, maybe I could bump the difficulty up 1 notch. Hey, what does Cero Miedo translate to? Ha!